Hey everybody, welcome back to another video with Gem Mint Masters. I'm going to do something a little bit differently than I think I've done before here today, but it's very similar to some of the content I have done. I've got a stack of cards on a purchase I just made recently. So I purchased, we'll call it a collection. It is a 130 or so Michael Jordan cards that I purchased through a Facebook group that I'm part of. This particular collection I feel really good about, and I just want to talk a little bit about kind of, purchasing collections like this, what you can expect to pay, what type of cards to look for that might have value, and kind of what my process is when I buy something like this, how I kind of go through saying, all right, which cards do I want to put kind of in my priority pile to evaluate for potential future grading, and then when I do grade, I've done videos obviously on this before, but I'll kind of talk about certain things that I'm going to look at and look for as I go through a collection like this when I'm evaluating it. So I've got all the cards here. They just arrived. The seller packaged them very nicely in team bags, top loaders. So you can see we've got everything here. The only thing that was kind of weird, and I'm just glad they made it here okay, they're all in a bubble mailer. And there's 130 cards here, so these are super heavy. They were in a bubble mailer, not a box. Made me a little bit nervous when I got it, but everything looks pretty good so far. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get through these. Like I said, I paid $2 a piece on these. You're gonna find that a lot of these cards probably, that's the going rate for this stuff. But you're also gonna find some cards in here that the value is definitely more than that. So, first thing I'll say is when you're buying a collection of this size, as a seller, let's say, you can really expect about that much, $2 per card. When you start to sell larger lots and buyers are starting to, spend more money on them, think about these type of cards. With more money comes more risk. So what do they want to do? They want to minimize their risk. So I'll just give a little bit of advice that I've learned. If you're selling cards like this and you want to maximize the value and return you're going to get for them, I maybe would not put them out as a lot. That is just the way that you're going to get kind of a lower level of value. You're still getting some decent amount of value, but again, $2 a piece when some of these go for more. But that's what to expect when you're selling a large lot like this. Again, you could break it up. You could take kind of the more expensive cards that you think and maybe sell those separately, or maybe break them out into lots of like cards of 10 or 20 or something like that. I found a lot of success in selling cards like that. So all right, let's go ahead and go through these, and I'll talk again about like some of the ones that stick out to me. I've been doing a lot of research on Michael Jordan in the last year or so, because it's one of those things where when I was a kid, I was heavy into, and now I'm kind of back into it. I missed the nostalgia of collecting some of the players I collected back in the day, which were guys like Michael Jordan, Shaq. I was, I came in onto the scene around the, early 90s, Chris Webber, Anthony Hardaway, those type of guys, who still have pretty decent collector markets out there. And it's really hard to find this stuff. So when I see it, and now that I'm back into it, I just get really excited finding stuff like this, especially stuff that's in good condition. So, feel free, I'll try to talk as I'm doing this, but if you want to fast forward a little bit as I open these, feel free to do that. There's a lot of cards in here. Shouldn't take long to get through. And then I think what we'll do is we'll kind of go through and we'll sort them. Talk about the ones, like I said, that stick out, and we'll talk about the ones that maybe I kind of immediately recognize as somewhat lower end, maybe not necessarily, priority level for grading. So, yeah. And the crazy part is a lot of these cards, if you were to buy these right now, they go for about the same amount. However, graded, they can be all over the place. A lot of that has to do with, and this is stuff I've talked about on the channel before, a lot of it has to do with gem rates, historical gem rates. if a card has a very small population of, you know, high graded PSA 10 copies, that's going to drive the value up because collectors are out there trying to find this stuff and they can't find it. So I'll point out some cards that are kind of in that category. And then again, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some that are in the kind of the opposite, where there's too many of them, or there's just a lot of them, and the population that is graded, it's very heavy on the, you know, higher graded side. So, all right. You know what? I'm going to go through, I'm going to stop this and then we'll pick back up. I'm going to kind of organize these into type real quick. And then I will come back and we'll talk about them that way. I think if we can go by like cards, it'll be a little bit easier to navigate. See you in a few. All right, everybody. For you, that was probably just a few seconds. For me, it took a little bit of the time to kind of arrange these into some, you know, kind of organized piles, and I'll kind of explain how I did this. And again, you know, what my evaluation process is when going through a collection like this. So I've got these all separated into piles. I went ahead and did by brand or, you know, type. And then right here, I have kind of my priority pile. So these are the ones that I know carry the most value regardless of brand. And I'm going to look at those first. I'm going to determine if any of those are gradable, and I'm probably going to put the most scrutiny on those. I'm going to take a little bit of extra time, really just focus on that small amount. You know, again, evaluate those first and then go through these other piles. I'll probably organize them in some type of order, but yeah, so I'll do it that way. So if we go this direction over, we've got Fleer Ultra. And I'll just quickly show these piles. On the top, we're going to have our base cards, which are going to be the most valuable. If you saw my last video, I actually got 2 PSA 10s in this card here. I can already see a little bit of whiting on the corner, so that's probably one I'll quickly move through, but I'm just going to keep these in here for now. And then as we go through, we get, this card actually has quite a bit of value too, this Jam Session. It's a hard card to get out of a box. And then we kind of get into the lower end stuff in the back. So I'm kind of arranging these by priority. I'm going to look over, you know, the certain ones first, and then I'll make my way through the pile. Next one here, again, in no particular order, we get to hoops. Older stuff is going to take priority. So while this is maybe not the most valuable hoops card out there, it's the oldest. The older stuff is a little bit more sought after and does, you know, carry some more value. And this particular set, I think, grades very nicely, and it's got some nice white borders on the front and back, kind of easy to see. Then again, you start getting into your base cards and get your base hoops. This is a pretty valuable one if you can find a good copy. You can see on this one, centering is not that great, so that's one again. I'll probably move quickly through. And then you start to get through some of these inserts or subsets within the sets. Stuff like this, not super valuable. I probably won't even bother grading, but something like this card in particular here, I actually just graded this, and this does kind of around $150 to $200 in the PSA 10. Low gem rate, just a really cool card. For some reason, collectors like this one, and the value is up there. All right, so now we get into our upper deck. Well, actually, let's do this. I'll put these here after this. This is our upper deck inserts and subsets, and then I've got just kind of the upper deck base cards because there were a lot of upper deck in here. So so you can see we've got a bunch of this base here. It's a 91, then we've got our 92, and then we've got a whole bunch of this all-star cards. Not the most valuable cards, probably something, again, low priority on these. A couple different ones. I believe one of these came in a set, and then the other one was in the boxes assorted with all the other cards. And then that one there, that's actually a pretty decently valuable card, but again, I think I saw some whiting, so I kind of threw that to the back. Alrighty, and now this is where it gets a little crazy. Upper Deck put out so many cards back in the day, so there's a lot out there. I just know this from experience. They're, you know, which ones kind of carry value, so I'm gonna organize them that way. The Skylights card, very valuable card, very well sought after. Probably a little harder to get out of packs than normal. Game Faces, kind of the same way. I actually did get a 10 on one of my videos on this. And then you just kind of start getting into the rest of the stuff. You know, onesie, twosies here and there. Collector's Choice kind of goes down a peg from Upper Deck. And then you get into these kind of cards like this MVP. These are all checklists. Or actually, that one isn't a checklist. It is an MVP card. But then you've got the Jordan checklist here. And then this is a checklist as well, all-star checklist, which Michael Jordan was the face of a lot of these checklists. And then you get a lot of these highlight cards, which aren't really truly like a Michael Jordan card, but people like to grade these. But again, they just don't carry a ton of value. This card right here can be valuable if it has an error of, I think, 1986, but these are all the correct versions here, not the best. And then you've got this scoring leaders checklist again. Actually, no, that's not a checklist, sorry. Scoring leaders, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. So, you know, this whole stack, not super valuable, but a few of them are in there, and I'll consider those. But the rest, I think I've gotten to a point where I'm going to be very selective with my low-end Jordan stuff. Unless it looks flawless, probably won't be submitting a lot of the stuff that I know I can probably just get my couple bucks back for. So, all right, now we get into Stadium Club. One of the kind of first premium sets that came out of the market. So we've got the base cards here. These are definitely some good ones. A few $100s at least, PSA 10. These two came from the same set, along with this one. So you've got this set right here has 3, but it kind of goes this way in value, 1, 2, 3, and that's the order in the set they are as well. And then this Members Choice, not to be confused with Members Only, came out of the same set as this one, but this one is much more valuable than that one. Alrighty, moving on to Topps. Topps, there's a few good ones out there, but I think a lot of the top stuff is pretty low end, and you can pick it up for 50, 60 bucks in a PSA 10. You've got kind of more expensive stuff like Topps Gold, which if you're going to go one route, I would kind of steer you toward the Topps Gold, because you'll pay maybe $2 for a base card like this, but in the Topps Gold, you might pay 5, 10. And those do carry a ton of value. A set like this is definitely well sought after too, kind of one of the mid to late 90s top sets, gold border all around, super hard to gem. And then you've got this one here, a decent card, just not, it carries as much value as something like this. Alrighty, and then we get into kind of the older sets where gemming cards was really difficult. So while these type of cards are a dime a dozen and they printed 1 million of them, they can be super valuable. So 91 Fleer, I learned my lesson on this one when I was doing a lot of my low end grading. You've got borders up top and below, so you want to look for a match there. You can tell this one is off center. And then you've got a border on the edge here, but you really don't have one over here. So you want to see a match on all 3 of these. And then obviously you've got dark corners all around, and then you've got kind of the same color corners on the back. So something like this, these are great cards to grade if you can get a 10, but man, it's tough sledding to do that. Super low gem rates, really hard to get. But this card right here goes for $3+ $100. So if you find a good copy, it might not be a bad idea to do it. So, I'm going to go through these. I'm going to go through them very carefully, like that one right there, much better. But this edge isn't looking great. So I'm going to go through these with a fine-tooth comb, see if I can find some very similar on this 92-93 set. But you do have a border all the way around. But again, gold all the way around, very hard to gem. I have been lucky to gem a few of these. But again, I'm going to scrutinize these quite a bit more, and these. And then these are the base cards. And then you start to get into this stuff here. Again, not as valuable, but for some reason, this particular set is just so hard to gem that if you have good looking copies, try it out. Maybe don't send them all at once, but try it out and see how you can do. And then you kind of get into these other ones too. But again, these do carry a decent amount of value just because of how hard they are to gem. And the centering is just all over the place, as you can see there. So be very careful when subbing stuff like this. I've gotten a few 10s, but I've gotten a lot of 8s. So you can bet that if I look through any of this stuff, if I consider any of that, that's going to be, it's got to be perfect. So, alrighty. All right, now we get into Skybox. There's just a few in here. Super valuable card right here. This is a pretty iconic Skybox set. I believe it was the first year of Skybox. This gold border all the way around. These are hard to gem. Again, think about the same concept that I just said with Fleer. If you do see a good copy that's good, good centering, no whiting on the corners, stuff like that, submit with confidence, but this is one, it's hard. It's going to be very hard to find clean copies of this. So just be careful. You'll notice something pretty easily when you see a gold border with any white showing. You want to be careful in sending that. This set here is also pretty valuable, but again, tough to gem. Just a very, you know, these sets just, I don't know if fragile is necessarily the right word, but man, it's hard to keep these things in good condition. And it's hard to find them in good condition these days, unless you're ripping a fresh box that's been stored for, you know, temperature controlled for years. But again, you've got the nice dark corners to see. If something's showing, then just, you know, I would doubt that. And I would doubt and not send that. All right, next one here, another decent value, but it starts to kind of go down from here. You've got your most valuable, then that, and as the years of Skybox go on, until you get to something like Skybox Premium, which actually are super valuable. Well, I take that back. This is Skybox Premium, but the kind of later 90s years of Skybox Premium were really sought after. So, and then this set in particular, I talked about this on my channel a lot. These gem really well. So with that comes pretty low values. So a card like this is like a $50 card. So personally, I probably wouldn't submit any more of those, just because I don't really see not only a return, but I don't really even see a value in, let's say, if I want to trade that to somebody, I'm just not seeing a ton of value there. So I would rather put my effort into, you know, stuff like this if I can find the right copies, or, you know, some other stuff too that I think is easily gemmable. And then we've got a couple of random cards here. I probably would not grade these. I don't know much about these at all. I can imagine they're probably just lower end companies. This one might actually be from some kind of baseball minor league set, but this one here, you can tell it's just, you know, I could be wrong. This could be like a super valuable card, but I'm guessing it's not. So correct me if I'm wrong there, but those type of cards, I probably wouldn't even bother with. And then let's get to the good stack here. So this is the stack that I've identified as probably the top priority in grading. We've got this Fleer Ultra award winner. This is, you know, $300-400 card in a PSA 10. Same with this Fleer Flare. This is just the base card, but these carry a ton of value. It's kind of one of the first like ultra premium sets that came onto the market. These were so fun. They came in little boxes. Each pack was in a box. So one of these days, I think I'm going to try to find a box and maybe rip some of those. I think that'd be super fun. But this right here, going back to hoops again, this is the base card. This is a few $100 in a PSA 10. Super cool, iconic card. Fleer carries a little bit more value than hoops in the early 90s, late 80s. But this is a really cool Michael Jordan card, one of the first years of hoops. So there's definitely some value there. But look at the centering. It's all over the place. You can see this one right here, not that great, but this one here looks pretty good actually. So, you know, I'll prioritize some of those for potential grading candidates. Stuff like this, these All-Stars from Fleer sell really well, but you can tell the centering is atrocious on this one. PSA will dock you multiple points for centering, even if it's a flawless card all the way rest around. No point in sending a card like this if you know you're gonna get like a 6. So centering, I mean, it's pretty easy to see on that one. And then here, I said Collector's Choice, kind of a lower end set, but this is a Players Club parallel. So these were like 1 in a pack or 1 in 2 in a pack or whatever it was. So getting something like this is a lot harder to get. So when you see like a stamp like that, Players Club, members only with Stadium Club, things like that, that drives the value up quite a bit. But again, I'm going to evaluate this like I do any other card, look for the corners and everything like that. And then last one here, like I said, Fleer carries more value than hoops. Fleer 1990, I can already tell centering is not the greatest. This is like a $250 card in a PSA 10, but that is definitely not getting a 10. So that would be a card I can already tell right off the bat I'm not going to grade. So that's kind of my quick process in a roundabout, kind of long explained way. But, you know, when I'm doing this, I'll flip through these things pretty quick. I'll know pretty quickly if there's some that I'm just not even going to bother with. And I did this on one of my other videos too. You know, first thing I'll do is I'll go through and I'll look at the centering on everything. And I'll kind of start to group it into piles based on good or bad centering. And then I kind of know, especially with this stuff being somewhat lower end, if my centering is not on, I'm already at least at the best getting a 9. And sometimes the value in a 9 just isn't worth it. So you can kind of make a discard pile. You can do that pretty quickly. And then once you've got that first round through, go back through now and maybe do one more pass at the centering because you've identified all the good centering copies, good centered copies, whatever you want to say. You can go back through, make another pass at that maybe a few more come out. And then once you've done that, then you can kind of start taking each one out and analyzing it, looking at the surface, because that's really the most important thing to me. Looking at the surface. Edges are pretty easy to spot, especially on darker pattern cards. So that's something you could always do during the kind of centering evaluation process. If you see something with white corners all around, then I wouldn't even bother. So, you can look for centering and edges on that first pass and then come back through on surface. And then when you're looking at the surface, it'll be pretty easy to see corners if it's peeled or fuzzy or whatever. And then once you've done that and you feel like you've got your kind of gradable pile, go back through it again and go back through it again after that. It's up to you. Do it as many times as you want to. I'm a pretty big stickler about this stuff. I want to get good grades. I want to get the best grades as I can. So once I feel like I've got it narrowed down to the pile, I may look through them again 5 more times. Some may, and some more may come out. So, that's part of the process. If you really invested in this process like I am, and you take pride and you wanna go out there and get good grades on your cards, regardless of how old they are, then you really got to put in the work. And from my experience, it's awesome. I love doing it. So that's really just kind of my little 2 cents, a tutorial. I haven't really dissected a little small collection like this before, so hopefully you found this insightful. I will follow up in a later video with the cards that I plan on grading from this set, because they'll probably just be in another kind of pre-submission video, and I'll talk about that a little bit on that video, and you'll get a good sense. Again, there's 130 something cards in here. How many are going to make grading? Is it 5, 10, 0? I don't know yet. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that works out. But yeah, so that's the, collection analysis and purchase in a nutshell here. There's probably some good potential in here for, like investment, long-term collection cards. But, when you can buy collections like this at such a low price, it's very low risk as well, because you've got a pretty good market to sell these to, true collectors back at a couple bucks a piece and make your money back. So anyway, thanks for joining me. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. More of this kind of stuff coming, and we'll see you guys in the very near future for some PSA pre-submissions, PSA reveals, lots more Michael Jordan coming as well. So thanks again. We'll see ya.